work never stops, and I love it. I'm in that space now, right? As an entrepreneur, being able to work whenever inspiration strikes, and when people just call, you're able to take the calls. You never know when that call is going to come. You got to get out there and kick up dust. Anyway, straight into another episode of Stand Tall, March 20th, 2024. Today we're talking about salt marshes. Very appropriate as I feel like spring break and summer is around the corner. So people going to the beach. So think about the metaphorical salt marshes coming up for your vacation. In crossing salt marshes, your sole concern should be to get over them quickly without any delay. Verse 8. If forced to fight in a salt marsh, you should have water and grass near you to get your back to a clump of trees. So much for operations in salt marshes. So if you have to fight in some form of salt marsh, which a marsh is a marsh, and I'm sure the salt doesn't help. It kind of thickens it up, so kind of maybe ah, you know, icky and mucky and thick and just hard to walk in. And so obviously don't go in there and don't fight in there if you have to, if you can avoid it. Just like a lot of things in life, I think there's a lot of salt marsh situations that you can fall prey to, whether they slowly creep in personally and take over your daily life, or if they're big out of the nowhere instances, they can either be a major salt marsh and you can either place yourself in a path to go through it. But if you do everything to avoid that, and through, like Stoicism says, if there are forces outside of your control, other people who decide to do things for whatever stupid reason, whatever logic befell them at the time, and you find yourself in a salt marsh, you need to get your back to water or to a tree or to something that you can't be attacked from, because you were already in a sticky situation, in a bad spot. So to make sure that, because you're not going to be able to be as maneuverable, and being maneuverable and adaptable is what's important, especially in terrain. So chapter 9 in the alternate translation, Master Sun says, go right through salt marshes. Just go quickly and do not tarry. If you run into an army in the middle of a salt marsh, stay by the water plants with your back to the trees. This applies to an army in a salt marsh. Wang Chi is saying to this, should you unexpectedly encounter an opponent in such a situation, here too you should take the most advantageous factors, with your backs towards the most secure direction. So here too, so that is the key that I took away, that we're going to take away. Here too, you should take the most advantageous factors. When you're right, and when you're in the metaphorical ditch, quit digging. You're in the hole, get out. Right. So cling on to what you can and make good decisions from there. Right. Make decisions from there. Tonight is going to be interesting. It's late. I've not stopped working. It is 7 o'clock, and I have a caffeinated tea. It's going to be a weird night. We're diving into LLMs after this. Let's go over to the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. March 20th, ready and at home. I may wish to be free from torture, but if the time comes for me to endure it, I'll wish to bear it courageously with bravery and honor. Wouldn't I prefer not to fall into war? But if war does befall me, I wish to carry nobly the wounds, starvation, and other necessities of war. So, like, wouldn't I prefer not to fall into the salt marsh? But if a salt marsh were to befall on me, I wish to carry the wounds, starvation, and other necessities of war. Neither am I so crazy as to desire illness, but if I must suffer illness, I'll wish to do nothing rash or dishonorable. The point is not to wish for these adversities, but for the virtue that makes adversities bearable. Seneca, Moral Letters 67.4, right? When you're going through hell, keep going, right? Winston Churchill. Like, there's these great quotes that, like, Seneca is telling us that it's better not to go into war. It's better not to go into the salt marsh or get yourself in the sticky situation. But you never know, because you're not crazy, but the world can be crazy at times. And I don't desire to be ill. I don't desire to feel bad. I don't desire to have gotten a bad night of sleep. But the war today, the minor salt marshes, the fatigue. I didn't sleep well, right? Like, and so you can do everything you can, but at the end of the day, you have to do what you have to do. And whether you got 4 hours of sleep or 8 hours of sleep, Sometimes life is just life, and you can do everything you can to mitigate that, but also you just have to keep moving through the salt marsh of life, as it were, as well. President James Garfield was a great man, raised in humble circumstances, self educated, and eventually a Civil War hero. His presidency was cut short by an assassin's bullet. In his brief time in office, he faced a bitterly divided country as well as a bitterly and internally divided Republican Party. During one fight which challenged the very authority of his office, he stood firm, telling an advisor, "Of course I deprecate war, but if it is brought to my door, the bringer will find me at home." That's what Seneca is saying here. We'd be crazy to want to face difficulty in life, but we'd be equally crazy to pretend that it isn't going to happen. And I think that's why the world has gone as crazy as it's gone, is because people don't think that war is going to happen. People don't think that bad things and crazy things can happen. And so that's why we're getting crazier, because we're all pretending it's all good. Which is why when it knocks on our door, as it very well may this morning, let's make sure we're prepared to answer. Not the way we are when a surprise visitor comes late at night, but the way we are when we're waiting for an important guest, dressed in the right headspace and ready to go. So that ultimately says to me, no matter what happens, you're always going to have to put on the suit, put on the helmet, address the situation at hand, because at any second, at the drop of a hat, anything could happen, and everything in your life that you've taken for granted until now will not be there tomorrow.